let me talk about what I call production knives. A production knife is, God, how do you say it? It's a Chevrolet. It's mass-produced knives. There are mass-produced big companies making beautiful knives. I'll use the example Shun, Shun, beautiful knives. Miyabi, beautiful knives. Wusthof, German knives, beautiful knives. Global, Japanese knives, beautiful knives. All these knives are quality, mass-produced knives that come super sharp out of the box. They're consistent, whatever steel they happen to use. Some brands have multiple levels, which is one of the advantages for buying those production knives is they have different price points. And they have the lesser quality steel, the less expensive, simpler handles, and the better quality steel, maybe more expensive steel, harder steels, more elaborate grinds, and they have different price points that you can purchase. You can get something from $100 with the block all the way up to $1,500, $2,000 knife sets. You can get 3 knives that are $2,000. They are the good production companies have this variety. They are quality knives, but they're a Chevrolet, they're a Buick, they're a Ford, they're a Cadillac. They are all different price points and qualities, but they're all production knives. Then there are production knives that are the smaller, less known companies that produce inexpensive production knives. They're not made in the big, go online, do a YouTube search and see, look at Wusthof or look at Shun and look at their factories. They are mass produced where they're big automated machines with lots of knives going down an assembly line like a factory that bakes bread. You know, the same thing. Big organized company, big machines applying those edges. Whereas the production knives that I look to buy, the Japanese knives, are small production, even though it's a mass produced, but it's more of a hands-on. They are not as good quality control. They are not as good necessarily component-wise. They are not as consistent, but there is nothing wrong with these smaller production knives. They happen to be an excellent choice and an excellent value knife. And they're available in all kinds of varieties of steels depending upon who makes it. So because of that, I started looking at those knives instead of the production knives, because the production knives, they, even if you buy the best, most expensive one, it is what it is. It's too perfect for me. It's beautiful, but I found that I like the inexpensive knives better that have a little flaw and a little character because I didn't baby them. I didn't care so much. I looked at them as a test subject now as compared to a knife that I collected. And then what happened was I learned that in the price points, which knives were comparable, or that's what I attempted to do, is buy knives in these lower, less expensive price points and compare them to actually learn about knives and the grinds instead of buying Shun knives and Global that everyone you know is perfect and you know everyone out of the box is a perfect knife. I bought knives that were a little different, that had a little more of that handmade character, that imperfection, that you could see how that person held it and ground it, because it's not being, that edge wasn't applied by a machine. That edge on a shun or on a Yaxle or on a Miyabi is like perfect because it's applied on the edge by a machine, whereas these Japanese knives that I'm buying are not quite the same quality, and you can see how they were hand sharpened by a person hand applying that edge on a belt. So they have some character to them. So what I did is I buy those knives and I use them, like I said in the previous video, I use them until they need to be sharpened. But I look at them first out of the box. I measure their sharpness. I look at the edges, how one side compares to the other, how the heel compares to the tip, how the edge is applied down the length of it. And I take pictures of this and I make notes and I record it. I measure the sharpness, I do a paper cut, do all these things so that I have a basis of comparison, a set starting point. And then I use it until it needs to be sharpened. And then I have the pleasure of figuring out how to match that maker's applied edge, that edge that was on that knife out of the box. Now I have the ability to use my wicked edge and my sharpening style, my technique, to match that grind so I can sharpen it in a method, and I say emulate, a method that copies, a method that looks like, feels like, behaves like what that guy who made the knife intended that edge to look like. So I try to copy, to mimic that edge. And then when I do my wicked edge sharpening job and I do what appears to be, through my inspection and my testing, what appears to be the best applied edge I can apply to that knife, because I used it, now I have a basis for comparison. And this is my lecture that I want to share with you knife sharpeners. A lot of us get into it like I did, and I only had a handful of knives when I bought the first Wicked Edge, a handful of Wusthof knives, and then I learned about the Tohiros, and I started buying better knives, and I tried to start collecting knives. And what I did was, when I said I sharpened a lot of really nice knives and put my take, my edge, my understanding of how it should be sharpened. I put that edge on these knives without ever figuring out how that knife was supposed to cut from the maker. So that's the basis of my sharpening that I'm trying to convey to you guys, is that I'm a copy sharpener. I emulate the maker's edge. If I was making my own knife, I would know how I would want to apply it, and I would apply the edge that I think is right. But I did that at the start. I applied the edge that I thought was right in my immature experience sharpening knives. I thought I saw something, and it wasn't until I started using these knives, until I understood that knife, that I was able, I believe, to sharpen knives well. And with all of this, as I bought these knives and as I collected these knives, while in this group, because I'm standing here making these videos, it's important to me that I don't feel like I'm talking like a fool. So I do look into what I'm talking about, trying to convey information correctly. And I started looking at my knives, and I started seeing things within my knives that made this more interesting to me, to make this knife talk more interesting, how one compares to the other. And we're going to talk about that some more too. I want to go through and show you some of my knives in my collection and talk about them. And it's not that my collection is unique, although it is unique because this combination here in my house is not a combination that you'll find any other place. Coincidentally, I'm sure you'll find many people who have many of the knives that I have in their collection, but nobody has this mix, this variety. And I purposefully bought knives in order to answer questions I had about sharpening. And that's where I am today. I started recognizing the inconsistencies and what I was seeing from knife to knife to knife, and how it was described by the knife sellers, the wholesalers, the dealers. And now I'm trying to understand that, because that is what we use in order to understand that knife, is the description from the maker. And then that description from the maker in writing on paper, and what we physically see, we have to understand that, figure that out in order to know how to sharpen that knife, if you care to apply the proper edge to that knife. So you can take any knife, clamp it up, not ever look at it, set your angles, and sharpen an edge, make those bevels come together keenly, and that knife will be sharp. But that's not necessarily sharpening that knife in a proper method that coincides with that edge that was applied. See, we can put anything on there and finish that steel and make it smooth and bring it together, and it'll be sharp, but it might have been sharper if you understood what the knife maker was making, what he designed. And that's what happened to me with these Japanese knives, is that there's such a variety of them that it makes for some very interesting sharpening. And I'm going to stop here because the subjects get too crisscrossed and too many tangents, and I'm trying to keep this cohesive for you and not go off on these tangents. And let me stop here and see where we're going to go on another one.